Late one night while driving along a deserted road, my car suddenly shuddered and I came to a halt. Panic set in as I realized that I was stranded in the darkness, far away from any immediate help. I assessed the situation and decided to walk to the nearest gas station, which was several miles away. The night was eerie, with an occasional gust of wind rustling through the trees, and the dim glow of the moon casting faint shadows on the road. As I approached the small gas station, I couldn't help but notice its worn-out appearance. The flickering fluorescent lights gave the surroundings an eerie atmosphere, and the silence was broken only by the sound of distant crickets. Inside the store, I found a tired attendant behind the counter. His worn expression and the sparse number of customers added to the quiet ambience. I explained my situation and he kindly offered to take a look at my car. We ventured outside and the night air felt heavy with anticipation. The attendant skillfully inspected the engine, diagnosing the issue. As he worked, though, a sense of unease washed over me, as if someone or something was watching us from the shadows. A sudden gust of wind made the trees sway and I couldn't shake the feeling of being observed. My senses heightened and every sound seemed to echo through the night. But we persisted, determined to fix the car and get back on the road. Just as the attendant was about to finish his repairs, a distant scream shattered the stillness. We froze, exchanging alarmed glances. Without hesitation, we followed the sound, our instincts urging us to help. As we approached the source of the scream, the air grew thick with tension. All of a sudden, the scream sounded like it was coming towards us, and we met head-on with a young woman that seemed like she was running for her life. Her fear was palpable. We tried to ask her what was wrong, but it didn't seem like she had any time to answer questions. So we hurried our way back to the gas station, seeking some form of shelter versus being out in the open. We ended up calling the police, and we later learned that the woman was running away from a boyfriend of sort. They lived back off the road, kind of in the middle of nowhere, so that's where she came running from. With that settled, hours later a tow truck arrived to assist with my car, and I later continued my journey with a renewed appreciation for the mysteries that lie hidden in the night. That experience is forever etched in my memory, a reminder that even the most ordinary of situations, there can be moments of inexplicable strangeness that defy explanation. This happened back in December when I was home for Christmas break. I found myself seeking solace in the dimly lit ambience of a local bar. I had been out with my friends earlier, but they had all called it quits for the night, so I was hanging around for a nightcap. The neon signs flickered, casting an otherworldly glow upon the patrons. It was then that I noticed him. The bartender, an enigmatic figure with a penetrating gaze that seemed to pierce through the facade of every customer. I took a seat at the bar, drawn to the mysterious aura surrounding him. As he prepared my drink, his movements were swift and deliberate, like a master of his craft. His eyes never left mine, as if he could see into the depths of my soul. Conversation flowed effortlessly between us. He spoke of odd things and the casual story about nights working, but then he whispered things that made me soon take a turn and left me unsettling and an unease lingering in the air. Yet despite the growing discomfort, a morbid curiosity kept me engaged in his stories. Hours had passed and the bar had emptied, leaving only the two of us. It was then that he made an unexpected offer to accompany me home, as if drawn to something within me. A shiver crawled down my spine, but my curiosity overruled my instincts. As we stepped out into the cool night air, the atmosphere had shifted. Shadows danced along the streets, concealing secrets that sent chills down my spine. The bartender's presence felt suffocating, his gaze intense and unwavering. Navigating through dimly lit alleyways, I became increasingly aware of his unsettling proximity. Every turn I made, he mirrored, his presence growing more invasive with each step. The once familiar path became an unfamiliar labyrinth, trapping me in an ever-tightening grip. Fear took hold of my senses, urging me to escape from this encounter. I quickened my pace, desperate to distance myself from the relentless presence that trailed closely behind. Panic set in as I realized that I was being followed by a stranger whose intentions remained a mystery, but were now coming to the surface. With each passing moment, the world around me seemed to distort, as if reality itself were unraveling. The streets grew desolate, devoid of any sign of life. An overwhelming sense of isolation permeated the air, and a sense of impending doom pressed in upon me. Finally reaching my home, I fumbled for my keys, a sense of dread weighing heavily upon my heart. As the door swung open, the bartender's presence lingered just behind me. His voice, sounding sinister, cut through the silence, revealing a dark intention that I had not initially anticipated. Terrified, I slammed the door shut, locking out the enigma that had invaded my life. I stumbled backward, my mind racing with questions and the chilling realization that I had invited this horrible person into my world. Every night after that, I lived in fear, the memories coming to the surface of my encounter. Every creak around the house or the whisper of the wind, it carried his presence, lingering just beyond. It was a constant reminder that some encounters, no matter how intriguing or innocent they may seem, carry consequences that can never be undone. As time passed, though, I sought solace in the belief that the encounter had been nothing more than a twisted figment in my imagination, that I had simply blown it out of proportion. But in all reality, I am one of the lucky ones that got out physically unscathed. It really could have been much worse. Since that night, I haven't seen the man, but also, I haven't gone back to that bar. Don't think I ever will. Moving to a new neighborhood is always an exciting prospect. A fresh start, new surroundings, and the chance to build connections with your neighbors. But what happens when that initial excitement turns into a terrifying ordeal? And this is the story of my experience with a neighbor who turned out to be a relentless stalker. It all started innocently enough. I had just moved into a quaint house in a quiet street, eager to settle in and establish a sense of belonging. My next-door neighbor, Mr. Johnson, seemed friendly and approachable. He greeted me with a warm smile, offering help if I ever needed anything. At first, his kindness was comforting, but little did I know that behind that smile, an obsession was brewing. It began subtly away from his porch whenever I came and went, his gaze lingering a little too long, as if studying my every move. I dismissed it as harmless, neighborly curiosity, attributing it to the excitement of having someone new in the neighborhood. But as time went on, Mr. Johnson's behavior became increasingly concerning. I would catch him watching me from his living room window whenever I stepped outside. His constant presence made me uneasy, and I felt as though I was constantly being observed, my privacy invaded. It wasn't long before these signs of his obsession became more blatant. He started leaving gifts on my doorstep, a bouquet of flowers, a box of chocolates, even handwritten notes professing his admiration. Each gesture sent a chill down my spine as I realized the depth of his fixation. I eventually confronted Mr. Johnson, expressing my discomfort and asking him to respect my boundaries. He appeared contrite, apologizing profusely and assuring me that he would change his behavior. Naively, I wanted to believe him, hoping that his infatuation would dissipate over time. Unfortunately, my hopes were quickly shattered. His obsession had escalated, and it became apparent that he had no intention of relenting. He started following me whenever I left the house, keeping a disturbingly close proximity. I could feel his eyes burning into the back of my head, a constant reminder that I was never truly alone. The torment reached its peak one terrifying night. I had returned home from work to find a package on my doorstep. Inside was a collection of photographs, pictures of me taken without my knowledge or consent. The realization that he had been spying on me sent a surge of panic through me. I knew that I had to take immediate action to protect myself. I called the police, providing them with the evidence of his relentless stalking. Restraining orders were issued, but the threat still loomed heavily over my life. As sleepless nights followed, each day feeling like a battle against an unseen enemy. The anxiety took its toll on my well-being and sanity. The only solution that seemed viable was to move away after just moving to a new spot, to escape the clutches of this twisted obsession and regain a sense of peace. Leaving behind my new home, the neighborhood that I had hoped to build a life in, it was not an easy decision. But my safety and sanity had to take precedence. With a heavy heart, I bid farewell to the place that had become a prison under the watchful eyes of Mr. Johnson. As I settled into my new home, a wave of relief had washed over me. The weight of his gaze no longer bore down upon me, and I began to rebuild my life, cautious but determined to regain a sense of normalcy. To this day, I still look over my shoulder and fear that I'll see the gaze of Mr. Johnson staring at me. On the 4th of July, as fireworks painted the night sky with bursts of color, I joined the community in celebrating the occasion at our local park. Families gathered on blankets, children ran around with sparklers, and laughter filled the air. Little did I know that this night of jubilation would turn into one of terrifying proportions. Before the fireworks show would start, I excused myself from the crowd and headed toward the park's restroom. The path leading to the bathroom was dimly lit, the distant sound of exploding fireworks providing an eerie backdrop. A flicker of unease crept up my spine, but I brushed it off as my overactive imagination. Upon making it to the bathroom, I stepped inside, grateful for the temporary respite from the bustling festivities. But my relief was shattered when I heard the door creak behind me. I turned and there stood a man, his features obscured by the shadows. An unsettling silence enveloped the small space. Panic surged through me. Instinctively, I tried to exit, but the man moved with a surprising speed, blocking my way out. My heart pounded in my chest as I searched for any means of defense. The bathroom suddenly felt like a trap, the walls closing in around me. Fear gripped me, fueling my desperate attempt to break free, but the man's intentions remained unclear, but I knew that I had to get out. As I prepared myself for a fight-or-flight response, a stroke of luck had intervened. A voice called out from outside the restroom. In that moment, a stranger's arrival became my saving grace. The man who had followed me recoiled at the unexpected interruption, his attentions momentarily derailed. Seizing the opportunity, I managed to slip past him, fueled by my surge of adrenaline. Breathless and trembling, I emerged from the restroom to find a concerned individual standing nearby. They had come to use the bathroom, unaware of the terror that had unfolded just moments before. With quivering words, I managed to explain the situation, my voice choked with a mix of fear and gratitude. The stranger, acting swiftly and sensing the urgency in my plea, stayed by my side as we made our way back to the crowded park. Their presence offered a sense of security. Throughout the rest of the evening, I remained vigilant, constantly scanning the crowd for any sign of the man who had trapped me. The once joyous celebration had turned into a maze of shadows and lingering fear. I tried reaching out to the authorities, but there wasn't much that they could do because there was no evidence and my description of the man wasn't much help either. The sun's golden rays danced upon the shimmering surface of the lake, enticing me to dive into its refreshing depths. The summer heat was relentless and a swim seemed like the perfect respite. Little did I know that my peaceful afternoon would soon take a treacherous turn. As I waded into the crystal clear water, a sense of serenity washed over me. The gentle lapping of the waves and the distant chirping of birds created a harmonious symphony that soothed my soul. I took a deep breath and I submerged myself, the coolness enveloping my body like a second skin. As I swam further from the shore, the blissful solitude was interrupted by a sudden roar. Startled, I instinctively turned towards the commotion and saw a speeding jet ski hurtling towards me. Panic surged through my veins as I tried to gauge the intentions of the rider. At first, I hoped it was just a reckless prankster looking to startle unsuspecting swimmers. But as the jet ski drew nearer, veering dangerously close to my position, doubt seeped into my mind. Was it a prank or something far more sinister? The rider's face remained somewhat hidden, making it difficult to discern their expression or intentions. My heart pounded in my chest as I desperately tried to navigate out of harm's way. With every stroke, I prayed that the jet ski would alter its course, granting me a narrow escape. The roar of the engine grew louder, the wake created by the jet ski threatening to engulf me. Fear consumed me as I struggled to make sense of what was happening. Was this a deliberate act, an attempt to harm me? Or was it a reckless individual oblivious to the danger that they posed? I continued swimming forward, my limbs working in overdrive to propel my body towards safety. Time seemed to stretch, each passing moment laden with uncertainty. I could almost feel the rush of air as the jet ski skimmed the water's surface, mere inches from my arm. As the jet ski sped past, the rider's laughter pierced through the air, echoing with an unsettling mix of amusement and malice. Exhausted and shaken, it was clear that this wasn't just an innocent prank, or if it was, they took it way too far. I reported the incident to the authorities, providing them what had happened and a description of the jet ski rider. However, the obscured face of the perpetrator remained at large and their intentions and identity forever shrouded in uncertainty. Growing up on a farm is usually portrayed as idyllic, a childhood filled with wide open spaces and wholesome adventures, but my experience was anything but. Living on a remote farm surrounded by endless fields of crops, I found myself witnessing something far more sinister than I could have ever imagined. From a young age, I was no stranger to hard work and the rhythms of farm life. As the sunsets and darkness had enveloped the land, my family and I would retire to our modest farmhouse, seeking solace from the tiring day's labor. But the nights held a chilling secret that would forever haunt my memories. One summer evening, as the stars began to twinkle above, I gazed out across the fields, a sense of unease settling in my chest. The crops, usually vibrant and full of life, they seemed different somehow. Shadows danced amidst the rows, taking on grotesque shapes and sizes. Curiosity overcame my fear, and I ventured out into the night, drawn towards the eerie presence in the fields. As I approached, a strange chorus of animal sounds reached my ears, cries and growls that were unlike anything that I had ever heard before. Fear coursed through my veins, but my desire to uncover the truth propelled me forward. With each step, the air grew colder and an overwhelming stench of decay had filled my nostrils. The crops rustled with an otherworldly energy, and my heart pounded in my chest as I drew closer to the source of the disturbance. What I saw next would forever be etched in my memory, a sight that defied all logic and reason. Animals emerged from the crops, their forms twisted and strange, eyes seeming to glow with an unnatural light, and they moved with a grace that didn't match their appearance. In a trance-like state, I watched as the creatures roamed the fields, their alien cries echoing through the night. Their presence filled me with a profound sense of dread, as if I had stumbled upon a dark secret hidden within the very fabric of our farm. Terrified, I raced back to the safety of the house, gasping for breath as I realized what I had witnessed to my family. As you can imagine, with me being younger, they played it off as just an over-exaggeration and childhood imagination. After that night, I never saw anything like that again. But I remember on many nights laying in bed and listening out with the window open and hearing those alien cries echoing from the fields. Honestly, I'm pretty sure that a lot of it could have just been passed off as nightmares or, again, my imagination being younger. But to this day, recounting these events, I still get chills down my spine.